What's up, guys? It's Stamp. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about one of the most requested questions we get on our streams, whether it's what lure do I use in an area, which we covered earlier. Now we're going to talk about what baits do I use in certain areas. So the objective of today's video is going to be to go through and kind of break down just about the top 5 baits to use in each particular lake and or river. So kind of what I would use is a measuring stone to know if you have to move lakes or maybe you have to bounce back and forth between spots is if you aren't getting bit on one of these baits within 5 to 10 minutes, rotate a bait. And if you go through all 5 of them, you probably need to either move spots if you haven't or change lakes because it's probably dead or not doing well at that current time. So what I did is I've invited Mr. Crossy, who I'll introduce to you in a second. To most of you guys know him as the King of the North, and you'll see his stream link in the profile below, or in the description below, rather. And I'll make sure to link his YouTube channel as well, because you guys can use that for a resource. But I've asked him to come on and talk through some of the lakes that he's a little more experienced than I am. So I'm going to take some lakes, he's going to take some lakes, and we're going to rotate back and forth to talk to you about the top 5 baits in really each area. If you guys have any more, please add them in the comments below so you can kind of help out some of the other players, and maybe they'll add some that we haven't thought of. But these are for us the most consistent producers. It's not that there aren't other baits that we've caught fish on, obviously, but these are the most consistent day in, day out that we tend to catch the most fish with. Not necessarily the biggest, not necessarily the most trophies, but the most fish. So with that, I'm going to talk to you guys about Mr. Crossy. So he has been ranked as high as the top 25 players in the world currently, or I should say on the English servers. Currently, he is number 29th. I've probably been as high as, I don't know, in the 60s, and currently I'm 85th. So this is as of March. We've actually slowed down a lot of what we've been playing lately due to real-life circumstances as well as some other things. But we still love the game. We still play a lot of it. But this is a question we get a lot on our streams, and we figured this is an easier way to just link someone to a video rather than go into a long, drawn-out explanation. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Crossy, and he's going to start and talk to you guys about the baits to use in Mosquito, and we'll go from there. So Mr. Crossy, take it away.
Hey guys, how you doing? So my experiences on Mosquito depends really. I did a lot of float fishing and feeder fishing, and I had a lot of different species coming up, but the main ones were things like on float fishing. I was mainly using things like maggot and corn to start off with at low level, which was bringing in species gibble and your crucians, and also with the maggot you got quite a wide range of species from gibble, common carp, even crucians and roach. When my level got a little bit higher and I got a little bit of silver coming in, I then started to buy the casters, which started to bring things like tench and also crucians and roach along with that. I really tried to target the tench because they got more. You got more silver and you got more experience points that allowed you to level up a lot quicker. Once I started fishing more with the feeder rods, I was mainly using things like potato and corn, and that was bringing me the common carp. I think at my earliest level, I think level 3, I think I had like a 7 kilo common carp on the very basic setup, and that was using potato. So I don't know about you, Dan. What did you was your experiences?
Primarily on Mosquito, I would say that mimics everything. I tried to stay away from the common carp at that level, so I did not use the potatoes, and instead I threw worms to catch more of the perch, just again based off quantity and not quality. I was just trying to catch a lot of fish as fast as I could. So I would say I have the exact same list, minus I had bread and worms in there. It seems like when everything else didn't work, bread worked. And if I wanted to catch perch, I would throw a worm more than anything else. So if you guys don't know where to get bread, you can actually craft that. I'll show you here. It's one of the first things you can make, which is called the crumb. and you take one of these threaded loaves. Just use one of 4, so eat 3 of the 4 before you do this, otherwise you're wasting money. And then you're going to go ahead and prepare this, and this will make bread. And you can see I just made 47 pieces. The amount you make depends on your skill level. So, but I would say I mimic everything else about Mosquito, Crossy. Is there anything else you would add with Mosquito?
I didn't really use any ground bait at low level. I think you could. Not sure how much it would increase the bite rate by, but it's worth a try. Obviously, people at low level, you're only going to be able to craft things like, is it roach, ground bait, maybe? No, crucian and gibble.
Mm-hmm.
But personally, I don't think you need it on this lake. Obviously, there's a couple of decent spots that you can try that will get you pretty instant bites. But as for ground bait, I really don't think it's necessary over on Mosquito.
Agreed completely. That pretty much will wrap up Mosquito then. So from there, guys, we'll go to the Winding River, and I'll talk first here. So the Winding River unlocks for you at level 7. So if we look at the Winding River, Winding Rivulet, I guess. So $4.90 it costs to go there. As we look at Winding Rivulet, so a couple pluses and minuses. The plus is that this is a great lake for spin fishing. We're obviously not talking about lure fishing currently or spin fishing. So I'm going to exclude that. You can watch my last video where I kind of talked through some of the lures to use there. But this area gets skipped by a lot of players. There's good reason for that. To float fish, it's very difficult. Bolognese rod fishing there is difficult because your bobber's going down the river. It's very active fishing versus the passive fishing. You can absolutely bottom fish it. Another reason that some players skip it is the fear of the catfish that are there to pick up some of your night crawlers if you fish night crawlers. So, or fish pieces if you're trying to catch the burbot there. So what I did is when I looked through and I looked at my list, I looked through as a low level player what I'm going to be using versus a higher level player. So what I focused on are, I would say I'd recommend maggots again, primarily for the brim species. Redworms for sure. This is probably my favorite bait here is redworms. I would also use casters again for the brim species. You can catch a lot of different fish on this, but primarily I would say any of the brim you're going to catch on casters for sure. And then as we move down from there, if you wanted to catch some of the bleak on a float rod, just keeping your depth at 17 centimeters, bloodworm right near the edge of the river, I would say, where you can't get caught up in too deep of the current or too fast of the current, would be to catch some of the bleak. There's some of the other smaller species you can catch there. Some of the roofie you can catch that way, and that's what I would recommend for fishing floats. If you're going to fish with a float like on a telly stick, definitely use the bloodworm there. But bloodworm can catch almost all the species in that lake, excluding the bigger ones. So you can use it on a bottom rig as well. And then the last one I kind of wanted to talk through, and we're going to talk about this probably a lot over the course of the video, is pearl barley. So it's the second bait you unlocked in bait crafting. In order to make it, you pick up the Food Factory pearl barley from the grocery store, not the tackle shop, but the grocery store. And you go ahead and prepare your bait, and it gives you, again, I'm getting 47 pieces there. Typically will give you, I would think, between 30 and 45, depending on your skill level. So pearl barley, you could use it in almost every lake in the game. It's a really good bait, but for here, I would say you're going to pick up, again, most of the brim species. So the reason I'm targeting those is the money's pretty good at that level, and the experience is pretty good at that level in comparison to like the perch, where the experience isn't really that good, and the money. And you want to catch a variety of species to level up your skills. So those are my top 5. So Crossy, do you have anything that you'd add or change, or what would you say for there?
On Winding Rivulet, I didn't really get that much experience on them. I still haven't really. I've done a little bit of spin fishing over there, but for float fishing, which was my main method that I'd use, when I went over there, it was mainly with maggots, high up at the top end of the river. But like I said, I don't really have that much experience on that particular river. It just didn't appeal to me at the time. So I sort of skipped that one and waited until I was high enough level to go to the next one.
And that's very common, guys. So if you're a low level player, that's pretty common. Is that nobody wants to fish Winding River because as a low level player, your spin fishing tackle isn't great, and it's risky to throw for some of the pike there, and you'd much rather catch the carp consistently at Mosquito. So it is common that it gets skipped, but if you're bored and you're looking for something to try, go there and try those baits, fish in the bottom. I wouldn't recommend float fishing there. It could just be really frustrating until you get the hang of it. So,
the one thing I would add was if you were wanting to use the float, obviously the top end of the river, it's got a current on it, so you have to like trot the float down. But if you want to try the float and in static water, try the pond. That doesn't flow, so you can catch things like roofie and gibble, even frogs come out of that pond. So that's probably worth a try. I'm mainly using flies or bloodworm. Bloodworm's pretty good in the pond.
all right. So that pretty much wraps up the Winding River. So from there, I'm going to let Crossy kick it off with Old Berg, and we'll talk to you guys about some of our favorite baits there.
Yep. Right, so Old Berg, once you reach Old Berg, I think it comes in at level 12.
Mm-hmm.
You should then be getting a little bit more experienced, and you've probably upgraded your gear a little bit, which I would recommend. Obviously, getting to level 12, you should have at least stepped up your reel. I would recommend mainly no less than a Lacerti, so no less than a 5.5 kilo. You're still going to have a bit of a fight with the 5.5 kilo reel. You've got a good chance of getting the fish in. But as for baits, like I said before, I was mainly a fisherman, and I had one rod at the side, which was my feeder rod. So for float fishing, it was mainly using caster, and that gets you a wide range of fish on Old Berg. Just it's probably the lake with the most species in it. So with caster, again on the float, you're going to be looking at tench, roach, and with maggot, pretty much the same species. But my favourite was always the cheese, which got me some really nice tench. So there's a few decent tench spots. I think we can cover those exact spots at a later date. But cheese works really, really well for tench on Old Berg. And if you're looking at earning silver and getting those experience points to level up, getting you ready for moving on to the next lake, I would target the tench more than any other species in this lake, using, like I say, using cheese. Another good bait on here is the cabbage, which it will get you the grass carp, so be prepared for a bit of a fight. I've had grass carp that have took me over an hour and a half on lower level gear just to get them in, but they've been a decent size. You're looking at like 12 kilos upwards for decent sized grass carp. But like I said, be prepared for a fight, and that's using things like cabbage. You can also get them with the cheese, but yeah, cabbage was a winner for me. And I think not. I'd have to check my record, but I'm sure I got black carp on cabbage as well. Another one is if you're fishing on feeder rods, using the potato again, you're going to get common carp. Also, be prepared for a fight. They don't fight quite as hard as the grass carp. Common carp, yeah, you'll get those with potato. I'll look at my So Nightcrawler, if you're interested in fishing through the night and you want to try to catch a eel, that always worked well for me. Using the Nightcrawlers again on the feeder rods, that'll get you the eels if you're lucky. Other than that, it would be, so I've covered castor, cheese, cabbage, potato, Nightcrawler, and then your other standard stuff are like red worm, normal worms. They'll get you things like perch and roach. So I don't know about you, Dan. What do you think? That's my experience on Old Berg.
That's basically my list as well. I'd say the only thing that would differ or that I would add would be I would primarily say if you are going down the bait harvesting tree, Old Berg's a great chance to use some of those baits you've been crafting. If you're making sweet dough, semolina, garlic dough, cottage cheese dough, all those doughs produce really well on the bridge, which the coordinates are 4720. That all those doughs produce really, really well for crucian, for gibbles. I mean, any of those smaller carp species in through there, those baits do extremely well. So that's the only thing I would add to that list. Now, I will tell you that as a lower level player, you know, the in stocks and the issue, you're going to have a difficult time finding cheese and potatoes. And that might be a good thing for you because you might not be as prepared as you think you are when one of those grass carps gets on and breaks your gear. So if you're avoiding the grass carp and you still want to catch tench, throw casters. I'd say wheat seeds for me produce really well. And redworms and worms as well did well for tench. So if you can't find it, you can still get tench, but Crossy's right. You get a lot more tench, at least it seems to me, on cheese than anything else.
And a good go-to spot for the tench was 3133, not just down from the camp where you can craft your coffee and whatnot. And if you go there, don't fish too far out. Just fish on the edge. If you're fishing on the float, fish on the outer edge of the lily pads and the green weed. And if you're fishing on feeder, just fish in the edge in the green weed, and that's where you pick up your tench. They sort of like the cover of the weed, the lily pads. Fish out in the middle, you'll not get the tench, but fish close to the weed, and you should start picking up the tench using them baits.
The only other common question we probably get on Old Berg is where do I find the eels? So the eels are a very rare occasion when you do get one. As far as the best bait for eel, it's probably Nightcrawler. You also can do pretty well on cheese for eel, and I've caught some on regular worms, but they're super rare. I mean, to go out there and target them is like going out and targeting a golden tench. Once you get to bear, it's so difficult that to say you're going to target them, you're probably not going to target them. You're going to get lucky. But if you want to get lucky, those are the ones.
What I would say about fishing for eels on Berg, if you are trying to target them, the best place to put your bait is, again, in the weed through the night. Don't fish in the open. They seem to like weedy areas. I've had more luck catching them in weedy areas than anywhere else. So that's just something that you could think about when
I would agree. Yeah,
want to try that out.
And so that pretty much wraps up Old Berg. So from here we'll kind of talk about Kuori and probably the most fished lake in the game. So a lot of people come to Kuori and you're going to spin fish. That's primarily what you're going to do. If you're casting from the bank, though, you do have opportunity to feeder fish throughout the day in various spots across the lake. So we're not going to talk about the spots, but I will talk about the baits. So probably the most common bait that is used is mayfly larva. So mayfly larva in the game is going to get you char primarily. That's going to be the main species. Occasionally you'll get a lake trout. You might get, and this is during the day, so you may get a lake trout. You may get vendus occasionally. At night you might get roofie on them, but really you're throwing mayfly larva to catch char. And probably the second best bait that's on the lake as far as variety of species and being able to still catch the char is going to be the Nightcrawler. Same thing, you're going to get lake trout, you're going to get At night, you can get burbot with night crawlers, Vendus, but primarily if you're looking for char, mayfly larva, if that's out of stock, try night crawlers. You can still get char on night crawlers. Mayflies also is another bait that can catch a variety of species there. That's both on float and on feeder fishing. So not the larva, but the actual mayfly. So if I take you down to insects, that's what that one looks like. Then I have obviously fish pieces here. Fish pieces is only for burbot. In order to be able to craft fish pieces, you need to be at 50% in bait harvesting. So you may find it difficult to get fish pieces if you don't have your bait harvesting up. So if you don't, throw night crawlers if you're trying to catch burbot. And then the nice thing about fishing Kuori and the fish pieces is there aren't any catfish that can take your bait on fish pieces. So if you get a bite, it's a burbot. That's the only time you can only catch one fish with one bait, I think, across the entire game is by using fish pieces. There won't be any eels taking them. There's no catfish. That's the only fish that's going to take them. And then lastly, what I have on here is grasshoppers. Some people say crickets to try and catch Kuori char on a feeder. I don't see that. I do hear that it works, but I've never had that experience, so I'm not going to talk about that one specifically. But grasshoppers, I have really good luck with grasshoppers and catching eyed. Both on feeder and float, I've caught them. So that would really be probably the last one I would recommend. So I'll kind of let Crossy go and see. Do you have anything else, Crossy, that you would add?
I was going to say the grasshopper is the only thing I've had a trophy eyed on, and that was obviously on Kuori as well. But no, mayfly larva is a good one, and I have done a little bit of float fishing on there. But if you're looking in the cafe and you're looking at the orders, and there's orders for things like crucians, again, caster it's a great bait all round for float fishing. Works on pretty much all the lakes, and I've caught some nice crucians there as well to fill the orders. But other than that, no, I think you've covered what I know about Kuori anyway, apart from lure fishing.
Okay. So that covers Kuori, and we're going to move on to bear. So I'm going to let Crossy kick this one off. He's got the most experience of anyone I know on Bear Lake, so this is his baby. I'm going to let him go.
All right, so Bear Lake, I've put a lot of hours in on Bear Lake, and I've caught all the biggest fish that I've had have come out of Bear Lake. Using mainly boilies. So if you're going over there, be prepared for big fish, especially if you're going to use boilies as bait. Don't go there with your lower level gear. You're just going to have a miserable time of it. They're going to rip you all over the lake and most likely break your gear. So I'd recommend things like at the very least a saber reel. Probably even then you're going to struggle. You're better off using something like a gold 80 or a minimum of gold 60 and a decent kg feeder rod to go with it. As for baits, well, the original baits that I used to use were the boilies, and the things that I've caught the most on I think the yellow boilie is the one I've caught most fish on. I've caught well over 1,200 fish, the yellow boilie, and I think one of my earliest trophy fish came out on the yellow boilie, so that was a good one to use. And then followed by the brown boilie, pink, and the orange, all work really well over there. But the main two, if you're going to use boilies, are the brown and the yellow. They're good ones to use. If you're starting using the new stuff just introduced, some of it I'm still getting used to some of it, but I do have like a top 5 of the new ones. So let me just tell you which those are. I'm just looking here. So coconut and cream works really, really well. Weather time, you get more on coconut and cream first thing in the morning and just before dark. If it's really sunny weather through the day, it's a little bit quiet. But I have had a 40-kilo leather carp on coconut and cream. So that would be my number one in the new Barley range is coconut and cream. I've had quite a few fish on banana, salmon, halibut, and also a good one to try is the bloodworm. But if you are fishing burley, really you need to be using ground bait. If you start using ground bait over there, on either the loop method or the method feeder, you will find you'll get a lot of fish. And if you are using the ground bait, I would recommend is the basic carp mix. But if you're using the basic carp mix, check out the boiler that you're using. Read the description. It gives you an idea of what the flavouring is in that boiler, and try and match something up in the ground bait that goes with that flavour, and you'll find you get more success that way and faster bite response from when you cast in. And so yeah, the carp mix. So you'd have to actually craft it as a custom mix, but using those basic ingredients of your carp mix, and just add a flavour that goes with that particular boil. So, like for instance, the brown boiler has got bread in it, so use breadcrumbs, yellow boilers, banana, etc. And you'll find you have a good time over there as long as you've got the gear to go with it. Have you got anything on other than that? Well, bird damp.
I would say we sit next to each other and we fish a lot, and I would say, guys, if the one thing I would talk about bear is if your boilie has not gone off in 10 or 15 minutes, switch it to another one like we recommended. You have the old boilies that they aren't going to be in the game anymore. Like the yellow orange, those are going to be removed. However, when those are gone and you're using some of the new boilies, we're primarily using Old Pal, but you can use some of the other ones too. If you're not getting bit on salmon, try halibut. If you're not getting bit on halibut, go to coconut and cream. Rotate through them. And if you're not getting bit at all, something's wrong. But I would say using bloodworms is going to target a little bit of the off species. So you might get some brim with that. You're probably going to get more on the bloodworms, a bit more on the bloodworms than you will on anything else, but you're going to catch smaller fish. On the salmon, the halibut, the coconut and cream, when they go off, usually it's a 6+ kilogram fish. On bear, the only other things I'd say is potatoes. If you aren't getting any bites on boilies, throw potatoes. You'll catch fish, and you'll probably catch a lot more fish, but they'll be a lot smaller. Pearl barley and algae are the other two that I would mention, but boilies are the way to go when you fish that.
Press cake works really well.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, press cake. So my top 5 for non-boilies over on Burr Lake would be potato, algae, press cake. Cottage cheese works quite well. You will get bit pretty quick with that. They won't be big fish, but if you're looking for constant reeling fish in, cottage cheese and like Damp said, pearl barley is a good. Was one thing. If weather plays a massive part, I've found on Burr Lake. If it's sunny, things like brown boiler and yellow boiler are the ones to go at. Sweet, if you're looking at the new ones, try sweet corn. Also banana in sunny conditions, they work pretty well. For rainy conditions, things like coconut and cream work pretty well. If it's cloudy or rainy, they will work all the way through the day. But also things like algae, and don't overlook the green boiler. They will work in rainy conditions as well. If it goes quiet, try switching to one of those. You should pick something up. and press cake also works really well in cloudy and rainy conditions. So that's my experience anyway.
So another thing to reiterate: if you are level 18, do not go to Bear Lake unless you bought gold and you have heavier tackle. You're not going to have the gear to go to Bear Lake and have a good time. Odds are. Wait till you get bare minimum a Saber 60, but even then, I would say you're not going to have a great time with the Saber 60. A gold 60, I think, would be my recommendation for minimum.
Yeah.
Before you go there, because and your rod's got to probably be 20 kilogram, just to
minimum.
Yeah, just so you aren't getting broken off immediately. So
I think the first time I went there, I was 18, and I was so eager, I wanted to see it. I went, and I only had a Saber 60 and a Fortuna FD 420 feeder rod, and I hooked a big fish, and it tore the line before I even got it in. So it was a bit of a miserable time on Burr, that first experience. So I went away, and then I think I was level 21. Went back, and I graded my feeder rods and reels.
So gold 60, gold 80 should be kind of where you're targeting to get, and your rods you guys want to have. Probably, I'll just show it to you real quick. The Fortuna feeder, the 420 is probably, I would say, minimum. But so that kind of wraps up Bear. So from here, we're going to go to Volkov and talk about Volkov. So I'll start with Volkov, and guys, you'll see it's kind of a reoccurring theme because of the same species of fish are in all these lakes. So as we talk about Volkov, my recommendation if you're going to feeder fish is Volkov's a great place to make a lot of money and not do a lot of damage to your gear. And the reason for that is you're going to be targeting a lot of the brim species again, like you were at Winding River. So redworms, again, for all the species of brim, do very well for there. You can even catch gudgeon on redworms. You've got maggots, same thing, a lot more brim species there. You've got pearl barley again, that works really well on that lake, or that river rather. And then castor, especially on a float rod, I think it performs better on a float rod there. And the other one I would add is night crawlers. And the reason I would say night crawlers is there's often those orders for the crayfish. And by using a small hook in a night crawler or a small hook in a fish piece, you can often get some of those crayfish. They're pretty rare, but when you do get them, sometimes the orders for 30, 60, 100 silver maybe, and it's an easy way to make money. Like a small crayfish can be worth 14 to 16 silver. So that's why I put Nightcrawler on here. Don't fish Nightcrawler as much as at night until you have some of the gear to be able to at least deal with a 10 kilogram catfish, because you will catch catfish even on the smaller hooks sometimes. They'll take your bait. So keep that in mind. But even during the daytime, you can catch fish on night crawlers. If you look at the leaderboards, you kind of see the species. There's a variety of species, but some of the bigger perch will take night crawlers. And at night, just be wary of the catfish. So those are my top 5 for Volkov. What do you have, Crossy?
Volkov, mainly is like I'm off the dock, pearl barley. So I mainly target things like bream when I'm over there. White bream, blue bream, normal bream, white, the white-eyed bream.
Mm-hmm.
So it's mainly fishing off the dock. So I would use worm, pearl barley, works really well. I've also had trophy bream, trophy white bream on wheat seeds off the dock, and castor even fishing off the bottom. I don't do much float fishing over on Volkov, mainly because it's got such a strong current. You're constantly bringing the float back in. So I mainly do feeder fishing, but they're my main 3. Be pearl barley, wheat seeds, red worm. You could chuck in normal worm. I've had some decent bream with normal
Fimba too, yeah. We'll take the normal worm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Normal worm. And obviously, if you bought yourself a shovel earlier on, at low level, by the time you get over to Volkov, you should have a lot of worms in your inventory to use. So don't overlook those. They are worth using. And some lakes work better than others. You might find that on other lakes you mainly get perch and that, but on Volkov, yeah, they do work well for the bream.
I'd say
that's what I've got really.
Yeah, that would wrap up Volkov. I mean, Volkov, you're not gonna really fish Volkov on the bottom for anything outside of those. But if you do have orders for river mussels or zebra mussels, I'd recommend the algae for those. Algae can do well for a variety of brim species there as well. But if you're looking for the river mussels, that's what I find is if you're just trying to target them and nothing else, that algae tends to be one of the better baits to use. So from there, we're going to talk about Sura, everybody's favorite lake, and they're so glad it's in the game. And it's so huge that it's very difficult to fish. So our experience on Sura, I would say, is limited. And the reason for that is we really just got the gear to start targeting some of the sturgeon species on Sura. And I tell you, you can fish for 2 in-game hours and not catch or 2 real-life hours and not catch sturgeon. However, if you do want to catch sturgeon, what I find the best baits, non-premium, are the nightcrawler and the fish pieces with a white brim mix attached to it. Also, on Sura, if you're going to fish there and you want to catch the carp species, the redworm, not only will catch sterlet, but it will also catch some of the wild carp pretty consistently in some of the deeper holes. Algae there catches the silver carp pretty consistently, I would say. And then if you want to catch Ruud Flies on a float rod, works pretty well. Even redworms on the bottom, you can get the Ruud there. And fish pieces and night crawlers, again, unfortunately you are going to get catfish and probably quite a bit of them. But if you're looking for the sturgeon and you don't have any gold to use on a premium bait, then that's probably where what you're gonna have to use. So with that, I'll let Crossy kind of talk about what he uses there.
I mainly fish the pond or on Sura. So again, I target things like the common carp because in the pond, I know on Sura it does say that there's like silver carp, wild carp, big head carp, but you'll find they are only in the river section. If you want to target like the common carp, you need to be fishing, as far as I know, in the pond, and that's where I've had like a couple of weeklies out of there. They've been on the boilie, so I've used things like orange boilie and brown boilie. I think it was the orange boilie that got me my last weekly record out of the pond there. But I mainly target things like roach and rudd. Rudd are a really nice fish to target on there, and they pay pretty well. And you're probably looking like Damp said, things like flies. Flies work really well. The normal fly, even the I think they call it the hornets. They will get you decent sized rudd out of there. You'll also pick up the odd frog, and so yeah, that's what I would use over there. Also, bloodworm works really well, and worms, red worms, maggot. So they're my main ones when I go. They're the ones I try. If I'm not getting bit on one, then swap to another one. So red worm, castor, maggot, bloodworm, or flies, and the boilies. So that's what I normally use. Like I say, that's just in the pond. I don't really fish the river.
So with that, guys, that pretty much wraps up each river and or lake throughout the game. One thing that kind of as like an honorable mention, if you fish flies on the cottage pond, you will only catch frogs. So if you're fishing flies on a float, you'll only catch frogs if that's something you're looking to do. But you probably saw that there's a common theme between all the baits that we talked to you about today. Redworm, worms, maggots, casters, are probably 4 of the 5 most consistent on all the lakes as it sits currently. So the reason for that is we're targeting the same species of fish really across all these lakes. You're catching brim in almost every lake. You're catching carp in almost every lake. Now, as the game begins to get bigger and bigger, all these will change. But for right now, up until probably steam release, maybe longer, these baits are probably going to be the most consistent. So always have casters, maggots, redworms on you. You'll have worms whether you like it or not. And then I'd say probably pearl barley or maybe potatoes would be, or cheese, would be the one you're going to fill in for 5th depending on the lake you're going to fish. So with that pretty much wraps up the video. It was a long one, so thanks for your patience. We hope it helped you. You'll see Crossy's link down below for his Twitch stream and his YouTube channel that'll be in there. And thank you guys very much for watching. And you'll see us in another video. We're working on one right now for bait fish, so look for that soon. Thanks for your patience, guys, and have a great day. We'll see you in the next video.